keep seeing people try and throw shade at Fire Emblem Engage. I suppose this is the modern day equivalent of what they tried to do with Echoes when it first came out. Like, oh, it's a major decline in popularity from the other games. Is this the end of the franchise? You know, I remember when Three Houses came out, they were legit trying to say that, until it became apparent that it was going to be the best-selling game in the franchise. Like, I think Three Houses has sold more than Fates, like, over time, right? Three Houses has stayed remarkably relevant by positive word of mouth and just its, its unique aspects that make it really appealing to certain kinds of people. Engage is interesting because I would say it's probably the best Fire Emblem game since Awakening, like, overall, from, like, a pure gameplay perspective, but it seems as if there is a very dedicated group of people who are just coming after this game, right? Who are, like, calling it boring, calling it derivative, calling it uninspired, and I really don't see why. I talked about this in, like, my top 10 games of 2023 review, but, like, the hate towards Fire Emblem Engage is ridiculous, right? It's really interesting to see because there's no real argument for it. Like, all anybody does is just, like, make a YouTube video and just say that, like, oh, the game is only sold like 1.7 million units. That's way less than we were expecting. That was way less than Three Houses. Nobody's talking about this game anymore. Fire Emblem is doomed. But, like, in reality, 1.7 million is really, really good for Engage, right? Like, what these people don't account for is that, like, Three Houses was one of the best-selling Fire Emblem games ever, right? If Echoes is any indication, which sold significantly less than Awakening and Fates, like, the series is just gonna bounce back after Engage, right? You know, they took a risk with with Engage. They did something wildly different. They made an anniversary title, basically, and you're gonna sit there and say that, like, the series is never gonna recover from this? Like, really? Like, I could legit pop in Three Houses and, like, Three Hopes right now and have, like, put in another, like, 50-hour playthrough, right? Like, the series is by no means dead, you know? Like, especially if you're comparing it to Three Houses, a game that is, like, still being played to this day, right? Like, if anything, the popularity of Three Houses is going to keep Fire Emblem relevant long after Engage is forgotten about, right? Like, people stop talking about Engage, right? Like, the fact that, like, Engage didn't do as well as Three Houses isn't really a knock against it at all. It isn't a knock against the franchise at all, right? Engage is going to have its audience who really, really enjoy it for what it is. People like me, I was just thinking about going back and playing it today, actually. You know, it's going to have people like me who really, really appreciate and value the game and what it does, what it delivers on, what it manages to accomplish. You know, being an objectively better Fire Emblem game than Fates or Three Houses, right? You know, way better strategy, way better units, way better utility, mechanics, stuff like that. Like, way better map design in general. Like, it's so much better in that regard. Right, it's so much better from a pure gameplay perspective that, like, I honestly barely even noticed, like, the 4Kids tier plot. Okay, like, I don't, and even then, like, I kind of look back on it and, like, people try to tell you that, like, oh, the characters aren't interesting, and I'm thinking to myself that, like, Ivy is probably one of my favorite Fire Emblem girls ever. You know, Panette is awesome. You know, I like a lot of the girls. You know, I like a lot of these characters. You know, Pandrio is awesome. You know, I like Allier. I like the whole idea of you being this, like, religious figure for these people. You know, I like a lot of these characters. Like, calling them boring or generic is kind of missing the point, I think. Like, I think a lot of them are some of the most attached I've ever gotten to, like, any Fire Emblem units. You know, seeing Goldmary do her, like, brand of narcissism, or seeing Panette, like, spurg out, or, like, Pandrio just howling like a wolf, like, that shit, like, cracks me up. Like, I love that. I think the issue is that, like, people really want to take this IP seriously, right? They can't just let loose and have fun with this goofy adventure. Like, they have to, like, be super engrossed. Like they have to be like, oh, Edelgard did nothing wrong, right? Like, they have to do stuff like that. They can't just, like, enjoy the video game, right? They can't just enjoy the game for what it is and kind of appreciate the value it delivers on the franchise, right? And I do think Engage offers value. with its focus on historical characters, with its focus on like having classic maps, with its focus on like raw gameplay, map design, better pacing. Like people say the story is worse in Engage. That is not true. People really, really underestimate just how bad the story in Three Houses actually is. It's padded out, it's long, it's boring. Like the characters in Three Houses carry the entire thing. Like what actually happens in Three Houses is actually really dumb. Okay, if you actually think about it. But like Engage, kind of revels in that kind of thing. It revels in being ridiculous. It revels in being silly. And I think that's actually a big improvement. I've talked about this before, but I think Engage being a 30-hour long game as opposed to like Three Houses 50 for like a single playthrough is actually a big improvement. It incentivizes replay value. It incentivizes you to like to optimize your strategies. It encourages you to just actually play the game the way you should be playing it, instead of just doing the Three Houses thing of just having of just putting everybody in the most busted classes and just blasting through the entire thing, right? Like Engage is a way better gameplay wise than Three Houses. And I think eventually people are going to catch on to this fact, and eventually Engage is going to be kind of a cult classic, right? That's the way I look at it, is that like Engage really feels like it was tailor-made for people who had never played a Fire Emblem game before. Right, it's introducing you to like a bunch of the classic characters. It's giving you an idea of like the history of the series, like in the most simple, basic way possible, while introducing a bunch of new fun characters that are going on their own fun adventure. Right, like I think the tone change going from Three Houses to this was actually very warranted, because I feel Three Houses was way too dark. Like Three Houses was went places, bro. Like Three Houses, like I'm not sure if making the games darker would have been a good direction to take, because I think it would have alienated the people who are just there for like a fun video game, right? I think Engage was like a really good reminder that like at its core, Fire Emblem isn't about the dating simulation. It's not about the waifus. It's not about fan service, right? It's about strategy RPG gameplay, right? The best in the industry. And I think Engage is what reminded us all that strategy RPGs are a niche thing, right? Fire Emblem isn't popular because of the strategy game aspect. But Engage went ahead and doubled down on that anyway. And you have to respect the developers for taking such a huge risk with such a lucrative IP.